In 2018, after 17 seasons on Little People, Big World, Jeremy Roloff and his wife Audrey did something that surprised almost everyone. They walked away. They were one of the most popular couples on the show. They were young, they were photogenic, they were newlyweds, having married in 2014. They had their first child, Ember. They had a built-in fan base of millions, and TLC was paying them, by all accounts, a significant sum to continue appearing on one of the network's most popular shows. Most people in their position would have stayed. Most people would have ridden the wave. Most people would have happily collected the paychecks and let their children grow up on national television the way Jeremy himself had. Instead, Jeremy and Audrey said no. They quit. They walked away from the camera. They walked away from the income. They walked away from the fame. And they did it because they had a different vision for their lives. A vision that did not involve being characters on someone else's television show. A vision that did not involve their children being raised in front of producers and crew members. A vision that, frankly, most of America thought was a financial mistake at the time. 8 years later, in 2026, that vision looks like one of the smartest business decisions any Roloff has ever made. Tonight on LPBW Update, we are telling the full story of Jeremy and Audrey Roloff, where they came from, why they left, what they built instead, the 4 kids, the new farm, the books, the podcast, the influencer empire, and the recent stunning hint that they may, after all these years, actually become the next owners of Roloff Farms, because the quietest Roloffs are suddenly the loudest. And what they do next could change the entire family story. Let us start with how they got here. Jeremy Roloff is the average height twin of Zach Roloff. He was born on May 10, 1990, making him 35 years old as of this recording. He grew up on Roloff Farms with his 3 siblings, his twin Zach, his younger sister Molly, and his younger brother Jacob. From the very first season of Little People, Big World in 2006, Jeremy was a presence on the show. The fans watched him grow up. They watched him become the photographer and creative type of the family. They watched him fall in love with a young woman named Audrey Body, who would go on to marry him in 2014. Audrey Body, now Audrey Roloff, was born on January 19, 1991. She came from a different background than Jeremy. She grew up in Southern Oregon. She was athletic, faith-driven, and ambitious. When she and Jeremy started dating, she became one of the most popular cast members on the show almost immediately. The fans loved their relationship. They loved the way Audrey balanced Jeremy. They loved the wedding episode in 2014. They loved everything about them. But Jeremy and Audrey were never entirely comfortable being television personalities. Both of them have said, in multiple interviews since, that being on the show came with significant pressures. The cameras were intrusive. The storylines were not always things they wanted to share. The schedule was demanding. And as they began thinking about their future, they realized that the path they wanted, a family-centered, faith-centered, intentional life, was not necessarily the path the show wanted from them. So in 2018, after 17 seasons, they announced they were leaving. Jeremy has said in interviews since that he wanted to get out of LPBW so badly that he and Audrey saw influencing as a life raft. They knew they had a mission. They had a vision. They wanted to communicate things to their audience about marriage, parenting, faith, and intentional living. They knew the show was not the right platform for that, so they built their own platform instead. What they built is remarkable. Jeremy and Audrey created a brand they called Beating 50%. The name came from the statistic that 50% of marriages end in divorce. Their goal was to build a community of couples committed to beating that statistic, to making their marriages last, to being intentional about love. They wrote a book together called A Love Letter Life, which was published in 2018. The book chronicled their relationship from the very beginning, including the iconic trestle in Oregon, where Jeremy had proposed to Audrey, and where they would later shoot the cover of the book. The book became a bestseller. They launched a podcast. They launched an Instagram empire. Audrey, who is a strong writer and content creator, built up a massive following on her personal account. She wrote about marriage, She wrote about motherhood. She wrote about faith. She wrote about the daily realities of life as a young Christian wife and mother in Oregon. Jeremy, who is a gifted photographer, built his own creative presence. He shared photos, lifestyle content, and the occasional glimpse into their growing family. The family grew quickly. Ember Jean Roloff was born in 2017, before Jeremy and Audrey left the show. Beau James Roloff was born in 2019. Radley Knight Roloff was born in 2021, and their fourth child arrived later, completing what is now a family of 6. Jeremy and Audrey have, in many ways, lived out the vision they had when they left the show. A faith-centered family, 4 children, a life rooted in the Pacific Northwest, and, importantly, financial success that exceeds what most former reality television stars achieve when they walk away from their shows. The income side of Jeremy and Audrey's life is something fans speculate about constantly, so let us walk through what is publicly known. They have multiple income streams. The Beating 50% brand generates revenue through their book sales, their podcast, their newsletter, and their online courses for couples. Audrey was involved for years with the multi-level marketing company Young Living, where she promoted essential oils. Both of them have brand partnership deals with various companies, which they have discussed openly in interviews. Jeremy sells Lightroom presets, the photo editing packs that allow other photographers to mimic his aesthetic. They have, at various points, owned and rented out properties as additional income streams, including a cabin in Bend, Oregon. They are, in every sense, a small media business, and they have done all of this while keeping their children largely off of public-facing camera time, which is a balance many influencer families struggle to maintain. In May of 2024, Jeremy and Audrey did something that, in retrospect, told us everything about where they were headed. They bought their own farm. After a 2-year search across the state of Oregon, they purchased a $1.5 million property that included 4 acres of land and a house with 4 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. The property is less than a 10-minute drive from Roloff Farms. The land has a trestle on it, the same kind of structure that had been such an important part of their relationship from the very beginning. Audrey announced the purchase on Instagram with the words, "After a 2-year search spanning all over the state of Oregon, it is time. We bought a farm. And look what is in our backyard. Yep, that is our trestle." They moved in. They began the DIY renovations they had been dreaming about for years. They built, with their own hands and their own vision, the kind of life that Roloff Farms had once been intended to give them. They did it without needing to inherit anything. They did it on their own terms. And they did it without becoming dependent on a relationship with Matt that, by 2024, was no longer simple or guaranteed. Now here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because the original plan, back in 2020, had been for Jeremy and Audrey to buy Roloff Farms itself. They were in active conversations with Matt about purchasing the property at that time, before the conversations broke down. Audrey has been open about this. She has said publicly that they tried to buy the farm in 2020 and ultimately did not. The reasons were complicated. The numbers did not work out. The terms were not what they wanted. And so they walked away from the farm purchase, just as Zach and Tori would walk away a year later in 2021. The difference is that Jeremy and Audrey, instead of dwelling on what they had lost, immediately started looking for their own property. By 2024, they had found it. By the time they were moved in, they had effectively built their own version of Roloff Farms, on a smaller scale, with their own vision, on land that was entirely theirs. And then, in March of 2026, something happened that nobody saw coming. Audrey Roloff posted an Instagram update that set the entire LPBW fanbase on fire. In her recap of February, she explained that Jeremy's father, Matt, had informed his children that he was going to list Roloff Farms for sale again. This was the 3rd major listing of the farm, and Audrey wrote something that fans are still parsing. She wrote that since 2020, the property had been on and off the market multiple times. She acknowledged that a lot of healing and moving on had happened in the intervening years. She wrote that she and Jeremy had been busy building their own dream on the property they had bought a couple of years after the farm fell through. But then, she wrote, after celebrating their son Bode's birthday in the barn at Roloff Farms last month, they had a what-if moment. The significance of the farm, what it represented, what it could mean for their children, all of that came rushing back. She wrote that she and Jeremy began to see the farm with new eyes, in a completely different season of life. And then she dropped the line that everyone has been talking about since. If they wanted to sell their house and buy the farm now, they could. It felt, she said, like God was giving them the opportunity to choose it again if they wanted. She admitted that they felt conflicted. She did not commit to anything. She did not say a deal was imminent. But she opened the door, very publicly, to the possibility that after all these years, after all the drama, after the failed Zach negotiation, after the relistings, Jeremy and Audrey might actually be the ones who end up owning Roloff Farms. Now, why does this matter so much? It matters because it would represent a kind of closure to the family story that nobody had expected. The son who left the show, the son who built his own life, the son who, by all measures, did not need the farm to be successful, the son who could choose the farm freely, not out of need, not out of resentment, not out of any desire for a particular life that did not exist in some other form. Jeremy choosing the farm in 2026 would be the kind of full-circle moment that real life rarely delivers. And it would put Roloff Farms back in the family on terms that everyone could feel good about, or at least terms that everyone could live with. There are complications, of course. The biggest complication is what it would mean for Zach. Zach, who originally wanted the farm, who fought for it, who walked away angry, would have to watch his twin brother take ownership of the property he had been denied. That is not a small thing. Even if Zach is on record saying he is no longer interested in the farm, even if he and Tori are happy in Washington with their 3 kids, even if he is genuinely past the farm conflict, watching Jeremy buy it would still be emotionally complex. There is also the question of what it would mean for Jacob and Isabel. Jacob and Isabel currently live on the property. They are running the pumpkin operation. They have built a life there. If Jeremy buys the farm, what happens to them? Do they stay on as tenants? Do they leave? Do they negotiate some kind of partnership? None of these questions have answers yet. They are all hypotheticals. But they are the questions that hang over any potential Jeremy purchase of Roloff Farms. And they are the reason Audrey said in her March post that they felt conflicted. For now, Jeremy and Audrey are living on their own $1.5 million farm. They are raising their 4 children. They are running their beating 50% business. They are writing. They are creating. They are doing all the things they left the show in 2018 to be able to do. And they are doing them well. By every visible measure, the decision to walk away from Little People Big World was one of the best decisions Jeremy and Audrey ever made. They escaped the family drama. They escaped the show's narrative pull. They built something of their own. And now, 8 years later, they are in the strongest possible negotiating position with regard to Roloff Farms because they do not need it. Want is more powerful than need in real estate negotiations. And Jeremy and Audrey, in 2026, are in a position to want Roloff Farms in a way that nobody else in the family can match. They could pay for it. They could keep it in the family. They could give Mateo, Bodie, Ember, and Radley a piece of history. And they could do all of that without it being a financial or emotional necessity. That kind of freedom in family business negotiations is rare, and it gives them more power than anyone else who has tried to buy the farm before them. Will they actually do it? We do not know yet. Audrey was clear in her March post that they were still considering it. They had not committed. They had not made an offer. They were still in the what-if phase. But the what-if itself was new information for the fan base. And it suggests that something significant has shifted in the post-Karen era of the Roloff family. Matt is more open to family deals than he was before. Jeremy and Audrey are more open to the farm than they have been in 6 years. The conditions for a deal that nobody thought was possible are, suddenly, starting to look possible. We will be watching closely, and we will bring you the updates as they happen. So let me ask you, do you think Jeremy and Audrey should buy Roloff Farms? Or do you think the property should go to Jacob and Isabel, who have been doing the actual work of keeping the farm alive? Do you think Zach would be okay with Jeremy taking ownership, or would it create new family tensions? And do you think Jeremy and Audrey, who have built so much on their own, even need Roloff Farms to feel complete? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to know where you stand. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to LPBW Update, and ring the bell so you do not miss any of our weekly Roloff updates. We are committed to bringing you the truth, the timeline, and the story behind the headlines. I will see you on the next one.